From the director of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, I bring you Baby Driver. So I'll be honest with you. When I go to newer movies, I do my best to be as uninformed as possible. I do like to know what genre it is, whether or not it's going to be an action film or a scary film or a comedy, things like that. But I really don't try to look too much into what the story is actually about. Usually these days it's a franchise or a remake of something that's already been out, so it's usually already revealed to me. But this movie, I was kept in the dark about as much as I could be anyway. When I was going to another movie about a month ago or so, maybe 2 months ago now, they had a trailer for this and some of the behind the scenes aspects, and thankfully they weren't going into any spoiler territory. But they were showing this movie called Baby Driver, and I thought, okay, that looks neat, looks kind of fun. It's a little different. They, showed that the kid had the earbuds in his head all the time, and that he was just kind of weird and kind of quiet, but that he was good at what he did, which in this case is drive. And the kid's name is Baby, as they all have code names apparently. Okay. When I was first trying to classify this movie into some sort of relatable comparison, I was thinking maybe like a heist kind of movie, like an Ocean's 11 kind of thing, or maybe it's one of those savant kind of movies where this really quiet or quirky guy. They don't usually have quiet or quirky girls for some reason. I don't know. He has this innate ability to do great things, but no one expects him to do anything, and then they pull off really big heists, like the movie 21, like when they're in Vegas, or Rain Man. I guess is the classic example, but I'm not gonna speak on Rain Man as much because I haven't seen it yet. That's part of my series of the better movies in store. So anyway, um, that was my best guess for what this movie would be. But while it fell more into the 21 territory as opposed to, say, Ocean's 11, um, it was it was enjoyable. I didn't really know where it was headed, and I wasn't really sure if I knew if I was ever going to know, frankly, where it was headed. Sure, there's some predictable plot points. I mean, you have this set of criminals that come together. One of them's going to rat out the other ones. Someone's going to defect. Criminals by nature will defect on each other. They have their own interests at hand, so something's going to inconvenience them at some point. But there were certain actions that happened and certain timings of actions that happened that were just, okay, wow, that actually went through. You have a few main characters. All of them are on the poster. There are a couple of supplementary characters. They don't really add a whole lot to the story if you don't know about them. The gist is, though, that there are two sets of heists that they take you on. And the protagonist, Baby, B-A-B-Y, as he commonly refers to himself as, is this kid that always has earbuds in his head and his ears, and just is fairly quiet. People constantly think he's a mute, and they try to mess with him and figure out his story to get him to crack. And he's a hard shell to crack. And it was interesting though because he wasn't always like that throughout the movie. There are times when he actually opens up and seems like a genuine human being. And honestly, I don't really think he was really ever that robotic throughout. He was more traumatized and less robotic. And that's one of the things that really gets this movie through all the points. You have this set of characters. They're archetypal enough that you know what's going on, but they stray away from the stereotypes enough that you don't know for sure what's going to happen next. You have an idea, but you're not sure if they're going to go through with it. And sometimes they subvert you in ways you didn't even know were possible. Um, the directing was pretty cool. I mean, you have the director, as I said before, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Um, Strange enough, those movies are more kind of the comedic take. Well, definitely Shaun of the Dead, comedic take on the Dawn of the Dead, sort of. And then, yeah, you also have Hot Fuzz, which is kind of hard to describe in a few words. I mainly think, Nick Frost and that guy that's in all of his other movies, the one that's in like the Run Fat Boy Run, and the not stereotypically fat, but the one that's got a beer gut and is, I don't know, very short blonde hair. Regardless, this is not one of those movies. If those actors are in this movie, they were well hidden. So anyway, you have this baby driver who's the one that doesn't really ever go into the different offices to rob them, but always has the getaway car. And then the other people, go in there and raise hell, and they come back, and they come back to the car, and you know, and baby's there to pick him up and get him out of any, sort of commotion with the police. And he does a pretty good job with it, but you know that he's ready to go. Um, you find out later there's a bit of blackmail going on, and you may or may not know, but with the blackmail, it never really goes away without force. Um, yeah, so just seeing Baby Driver, deal with Kevin Spacey, this, kind of mastermind of everything. And to me, I think Kevin Spacey is the most archetypal character of them all. He's always this kind of smarmy guy of I know everything and you know nothing, and why should you ever question me kind of attitude. I mean, it works for him, but it's getting a little old. I like it all right, but it's not my favorite. You don't have to keep bashing it in. It will tire out one of these days, I'm telling you. But it suits the movie's purposes. It's passable. You have characters from the two sets of heists that happen that make it through each of the heists, and then they come together to form one final motley crew, and they go on a heist for the post office, and then things go awry from there. And it's really kind of hard to go further without getting too much into spoilers. So we can talk about the spoilers now if you want. So here you go. Breaking down the main characters for you, we have Jamie Foxx, who's this very violent man who came from the second heist, and he was one of the people that had commanded to obtain Michael Myers' mask, like the one in Halloween, except the other heistee originally got Mike Myers' mask from Austin Powers, as opposed to the Halloween franchise serial killer named Michael Myers. That was probably my favorite joke in this movie, and probably because I love horror movies. But anyway, you have this couple who came from the first heist. You have this guy nicknamed Buddy, and you have this girl who has her code name, and that's cool and all, but her real name's Monica. I don't know. I like that name. It's a fun name. They're constantly in love and whispering sweet nothings into each other frequently. And then you have Baby, and who, by the way, I love this. His actual name is Miles. I don't know. I thought it was cool because he drives everywhere. And you have Kevin Spacey's character, and You also have this girl working at this diner that baby's mom used to work at once upon a time. But what happened with baby was that his parents were killed when their car ran into the back of a semi and they got crushed. And and Miles was in the back of the car when this happened, and he survived that. That is terrible, terrible. But I will say, the way they introduced that bit of exposition, it was crafted in a very nice way visually. I mean, it's an awful situation, but it's better to show what actually happened and build the tension there and the shock as opposed to just telling you that this accident happened because you don't really picture it as badly as how they showed it. Like if I heard that his parents died in an accident, you're like, yeah, that's cool. But seeing how that accident happened actually plays into the story because later on they deal with the exact same scenario in the second heist when one of the heistees mixes up the Mike Myers mask, right? And they end up under the bottom of a semi again when they have this Tiger Woods look-alike shooting after them. Which, by the way, they never explained why he was shooting after them. They don't explain if he was like a cop or what, but okay, fine. Sure. And you have this reenactment and you're like, oh god, is Baby Driver gonna get leveled by a semi? And yet he's not because it's way too early in the movie for that, but the tension's still there. So out of the second heist, the only one that survives is Jamie Foxx's character. And out of the first heist, you have that couple. And then there's this other guy who constantly kept asking Baby for these different things and was more or less just trying to push his buttons and get him to crack. That's what I was talking about earlier. So then you have this heist at the post office that starts out fine. The car comes just as it normally would. But this whole time, throughout, you can see Baby's conscience really starting to show through, and he doesn't want to do this anymore. And after the two heists that had happened, he had paid off this debt to Kevin Spacey. This is the blackmail I was talking about. He had stolen Kevin Spacey's Mercedes, and I don't even know Kevin Spacey's character's name, by the way, because he's just Kevin Spacey. He's not. He is that character. Anyway, Baby stole his Mercedes, and he's been owing him money ever since, and he just paid it off. And Kevin Spacey tells Baby that, okay, you're good to go, you're all set, you don't owe me anything anymore. And he, along the way, found this girl at the diner while he was getting breakfast, and you have this budding relationship that happens, and they keep talking about how they want to keep going out west, and yada yada yada. And he thinks that he's going to finally do this after getting that debt paid. But what he didn't realize was that when Kevin Spacey said his debt was paid, now Kevin Spacey wants to get him into the business of making money through heists as opposed to paying a debt. Because Baby is always his driver, his lucky driver, if you will. So Baby is building up a conscience this entire time. And slowly throughout, he's seeing all these characters, particularly women. I think he was really impacted by his mom because his dad was an ass. And yeah, he's breaking his conscience through. And what happens is that his little acts of kindness build up in the end to when he finally, after this onslaught of just, car chases and, a little bit bloody action and seeing people fall off of parking garages into exploding cars. That was pretty cool. He ends up surrendering, even though you would have thought he was on the road and free because they were driving out. Him and his girlfriend at the end were driving out, and they were free, and they, had the right music. We'll get to that. But they get stopped by the cops for the 30th time, and after all these toils and trials of trying to defy the cops, Baby just says, nope, I am done. I surrender. So he goes to federal prison. And you're like, oh, this is how it's gonna end, huh? But what happens is that all of his acts of kindness throughout show through, and all these little character witnesses come up and say, yeah, this guy did these things. He was caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, he did have a conscience that was leaking through. He was on a bit of blackmail, yada, yada, yada. So his 25 sentences basically was pared down to 5 because of parole. And then they headed off into one of the, headed off into the sunset, if you will. Now, that's where I'm going to stop talking about the story and more into the visual style. So, this movie is really, it really gets most of its points. It has a great story, don't get me wrong. It's a fun story, it's a different story. Slightly, I mean, you have this kid who is always wearing earphones because after that traumatic accident, he just gets this constant, like, painful sound in his ears. It's always buzzing. So he has music in to more or less tune out the buzzing because he's always going to have a sound in his ears, so it may as well be a sound that he likes. Fair enough. Fair enough. But he can still hold conversations with people, but it's more on a minimal basis. He doesn't really talk a lot. He talks a little more towards the end because that's, part of his character development. But he's not much of a talker. But he is a goofball for sure, and he's definitely weird, but he's cool. I do think that the commuted sentence was a bit much, but if you're gonna like show what you really wanted to show, that he got through the sentence just fine, and that his girlfriend was waiting for him there not too long after, and they broke out anyway. Yep, makes sense to me. Might be a little unrealistic, but this movie isn't entirely based on realism. It has a fairly solid base in realism, but sometimes it gets a little fantastical, fantasy like, whatever. You have these. Well, one of the things that really drives God that drives this movie is the fact that he always has to have a song on, and the soundtrack moves this movie forward, and he's always jamming out to it or sharing the tunes. One of the things I really liked was that if he took an earbud out, the music would go at about half volume. That was pretty cool. And if if he took both of the earbuds out, it goes silent, and he has to face reality, which reality is always buzzing. Anyway, the music was an essential part of this movie because it's what really pushed him forward. The protagonist. Put him on more miles. Okay. Deborah, the girlfriend, that's the waitress. She's pretty cool. She's, I think it was more natural at first because she was like, who is this guy and why is he recording my conversations? And yes, he records conversations, which is super weird, but he has this hobby of, recording things that people say and then turning them into soundtracks, like making them into songs, which I thought was pretty funny because, people make songs out of the stupidest shit these days. So I gotta give you points on that. There's one point towards the, I don't know, like 2/3 of the way through where everyone realizes that Baby Driver is trying to head out and just go on the road already, but they catch him trying to leave, and so they, tighten their borders even more. And they ask him about these recordings that he says, and they think he's lying, but he really is not lying. And then they ransack his house to actually obtain these recordings, and they're just like, what is this? And it is pretty funny because they're like, oh, well, you weren't kidding. That's really weird. And it is weird, but, we've grown to like this character. Most of us have. I wouldn't be surprised if someone was rubbed the wrong way. But most of the unique things in this movie were really about the main character, Baby. He was a fun one to watch. very quirky for sure, but this is, his movie to shine anyway. And the actor you don't really see that often. I haven't anyways. Like Ansel Elgort, I know I got that wrong. And I know that IMDb exists, and so we can look there. Um, you have the girlfriend that's pretty cool. She spells Deborah in the strangest way. It's Debora. Odd. Um, but she's always singing this song with Baby, and of course, Baby wants to know what song that is, and he goes to get the vinyl. And whenever he goes on these heists, he takes only a small cut because Kevin Spacey holds the rest from him. And his foster dad is this, funny enough, this deaf black man, basically the complete opposite of what Baby is. And they have this really fun communication system, and his foster dad really wants to make sure that he's doing okay, and even though he's not doing so well himself, he worries more about Baby than himself, and he's just a really nice guy and a good person to help ground Baby into reality, you know. And yeah, so Kevin Spacey's all right. Like I said, he's just Kevin Spacey now. There is no other character that he plays. He's kind of in the same way that Adam Sandler just plays Adam Sandler. Kevin Spacey plays Kevin Spacey. Not any comparison on their character or merit. Just what happens to happen to both of these actors. You have Jimmy Foxx, who's pretty interesting. His death scene was the most creative one. They had the getaway car at the post office, and he's in the passenger seat when he comes in. And they were right behind this truck that has this like crazy, I don't know, wooden rod or something. And Baby's method of trying to get away is just to drive the car straight through so that the rod slams through the window and stabs Jamie Foxx, which is wow. And that goes back to my point of Baby was a murderer through and through. Yes, he was blackmailed, and yes, I like this character, but man, he did some crazy shit. And in comparison to what many people have received for their sentences, he got it pretty easy. So, man, thankfully at this point, hopefully, you've already built up your immunity to it, so you're not so mad about it. But if you really think about it, you're like, wow, Baby did some messed up things, and he got away with it. And it's not all about the good guys winning, but but the movie doesn't really treat Baby as like a bad guy. They treat him as a good guy, just in bad circumstances, which he was, but I don't know. He figured out a way to wrestle through it somehow, and so that's what really redeemed it. Because what happens is that Baby actually has the audacity to say no to Kevin Spacey. I was like, damn, so why is this movie still here? We're like, what, 25 minutes at this point? We're like, there's still more than an hour, right? This movie can't be over. There's no way it's peaches and cream from here. And of course, Kevin Spacey goes on to say, well, either you're behind the wheel or you're in a wheelchair. Okay, Spacey. Guess you're not so spaced out anymore. So yeah, so Baby is blackmailed, and then he just kind of stumbles into these decisions and all of these, gun heists and car chases and some crazy shenanigans. And at the same time, you're like, what? He's gonna get away, but everyone else is dead anyway, and he's not gonna be like the next mob boss, so he doesn't want to be a part of this anymore. And you can really tell that he doesn't want to be a part of this anymore. So, I guess fair enough. One of the big surprises that they had was that Kevin Spacey's character was actually ran over. And I'll tell you what, Baby has some serious anger issues. Serious. I'm just hoping Deborah doesn't piss him off. when they go out west. So in short, movie was cool. Movie was different. It went a lot more into the character's psyche and this criminal who's there but doesn't really want to be there and is just being dangled along by the trail of blackmail. And you have the really funny Mike Myers joke. Okay, funny to me. Man, I just hadn't seen that one before. You'll like it. You have the other characters that are pretty cool. They're not total ignoramuses. They are a little more wooden than Baby, but they're not bad. They're pretty cool. Kevin Spacey's Kevin Spacey. Figures. I think after House of Cards, he was just like, I own the world and I don't give a fuck. Yeah, that's that. But this movie, this movie was well made. It was fun to watch. It didn't give me any headaches. The action was sweet. You had a lot of car chases and a lot of hopping out of one car and going to the next car. Some sweet car switcheroo with all these red cars that they happen to go lining up in between. It made me want to take my red car out for a joyride. I didn't, I promise. But, man, it gets your adrenaline pumping and it's fun. One last thing I should mention, and this is not really for the Baby Driver, this is for movies in general. Please do not talk while you're in the movie theater. Please. I had to, respectfully as possible, to tell someone to please shut up today. Because it was bad. So just, please keep quiet, And obviously don't use your phones too. And they were using their phones. I didn't even mention that. But, to them. But I did tell them to shut up. Because it was annoying as hell. So just, please do not do that. Okay? Not just for my sake, but for the respect of everyone else around you. Okay? You can talk to them afterwards. Really. Go ahead. Tell them it was a great movie. Tell them it was an awful movie. Hell, even tell them that I was the asshole that told you to shut up. But just please keep quiet during movies, okay? Especially when you're in the theater, because that is a crummy thing to do. Okay, well, that's that. And in terms of my grade, this is the best one I've seen all year, to be honest with you. It gets my A rating. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, filming was cool. The writing was awesome. Directing was sweet. Editing was top notch. Cinematography, sweet. Characters, awesome. Storyline, on point. So yeah, there we go. That gets my A grade. And now I want to go drive my car out into the sunset out west. Alright, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Okay. See ya. Bye.